Your hosts are The Great Order and No White Guilt. And this is the after party. The crown winner of last week is Biospirit of the West, financially gifting $30. Congratulations. And thank you so very much, dear brother. In second place was Irish Ice, financially gifting $5. Two incredible champions, ladies and gentlemen. Big round of raucous emojis. Thank you very much, Irish Ice and Biospirit of the West. Congratulations. Financially gift on Entropy at 15%, where you can also watch the stream. I'll have it up in just a moment. Or you may financially gift over on Cash App, where there is no charge to you or us. Jared and I evenly share the financial gifts with our guests on the after party. Today we have, of course, ladies and gentlemen, you can see him, the one and only Brant Danger of the School of the West on tap. Brant, please introduce yourself to the esteemed community. Tell them where they can find you, and Mr. George will then take us into the conversation.
Hi, my name is Brant, also known as Brant Danger if I use my middle name. And you can find my work at the schoolofthewest.world. And you can contact me at contact@schoolofthewest.world. It's down on the bottom page of the website.
Nice and clear. We like that. So we are going to speak a lot about School of the West in a little bit. We know a lot of our chat here is interested in homeschooling, whether you're parents or parents-to-be, and are just interested in getting the right kind of education. And Brant is making a huge initiative. Brant has been on Jason's Sunday going free streams. A lot of you who have been around for a while may know that. So we have the afterparty.tv. You can go type in Brant's name and that episode will come up. Everything is cataloged on the afterparty.tv. But you may know when someone is on tap for the first time, which you are presently watching, we like to get their story, their background, how they came to wake up to certain things going on in the world and come to the advocacy they do, or whatever the activities that they do. So without any further ado, I didn't plan that. I apologize for it. But once it was going, I couldn't stop. Brant, we're giving you rolling out the red carpet and giving you the time you need. We'll pepper in some questions, but please, whatever is relevant you think for the chat. You've been here, part of the community, big part of the community for a while, so I know you know what the community here is about and what the tenor of this show is. But give us some indication of the journey that you took to end up where you are now.
All right. Well, I grew up as a military brat, which means that my dad was in the military, so I moved on average about once a year. And part of the time was living on base and part of the time was living off base. And when you live on base as a military brat, you live with, what's that?
Just said based.
Oh, yes, it was very based. You interact with other kids whose fathers are in the military or mothers are in the military. So you're moving around, they're moving around. You hang out with kids that are all different races and mixed races, as people were deployed in foreign countries and then they come home with a foreign wife and you're all kind of mixed up, and it's not really a big deal because everyone's in the same boat. And when you're in school, there's a very, very tight and well-made curriculum. That's actually a worldwide curriculum for Air Force Base and Army Post and naval base schools. Mm-hmm. So everyone's in the same boat. Doesn't matter where you go, you know what's going on. Now, when I moved off base for the first time, that's when I started having trouble with non-white students. And I know that I said this on some other stream, some other time when I was talking to Donald Kent, but my very first day of school off base, I was waiting for the school bus. And when I got on the school bus, there's, 2 seats wide on the school bus, and there's a lot of kids that are just in one seat. And so I was going to sit in one of those seats, and it's a black kid just giving me the dirtiest look I've ever seen in my life. And I think, okay. So I go to the next one. Can I sit here? No. Can I sit here? No. Can I sit here? No. Okay, I'll go to the back of the bus. And it's like that the entire year. And of course, I got in some fights. You can't always avoid it. Some fights in the classroom, some fights in the hallway, some fights on the schoolyard. Sometimes you can run away from the fights. It all depends upon the circumstances, but it goes on the whole time. And I found it bizarre that some people hated me so much because I was white. It didn't make any sense to me. And I didn't talk to anyone about it at the time. It's just something that just goes into the back of my mind. And we moved to different places, moved to different states. Sometimes it's the same thing again. Sometimes it would be a school district where it was mostly whites, and then that wasn't a problem. You can still run into bullies and you still get into fights or fisticuffs or whatever, but it's not a major problem. That's not something that you're looking out for all the damn time. You can actually do your schoolwork. Now, when I became an adult, I had some military background. I had some computer background. I got into teaching, and one of the jobs that I had teaching was over in East London for a while. And then I came back to the States. And in 2016, I thought, I'd like to go back to Europe, but I don't necessarily want to go to East London. Where I really want to go is to Norway, because part of my ancestors are from Norway, and that's just one of the places that I've always looked up to. I looked up to the people, and I looked up to the land. I love the land there. And as I started investigating the actual school districts and contacting them, I noticed that the administration were Arabs. They were Muslims. And I thought, why in Norway is the administration Muslims? I'm not looking at schools in the Middle East. And then I looked at some schools in Holland. I looked at some in France. I looked at some in Germany, and I kept seeing the same thing. And this totally confused me because this hadn't been on my radar yet. When I was in East London, as we know, it's multicultural, with no further ado. So I knew what to expect there, but I didn't know it was spread all around Europe. So as you used to be able to do on YouTube, as you investigate something, it leads to another video, another video, another video. And I started understanding some of the plans that had been set in place for several decades to bring in immigrants from non-white countries into the white countries. And the history of some of these countries brought people in, quote, as guest workers, and the guest workers just stay forever. And so it takes quite a while to actually piece together the full picture of what's going on. If someone wants to understand history, you can't just watch a news broadcast. You can't just read one article. It can take several months, or sometimes it can take years, because you don't know when you're investigating something if you're getting a primary source. You don't know if the person is being honest. So you have to read things that you agree with, and you have to read things that you disagree with, and then you can you filter that out over a long period of time. So it took me a long time to figure out what was going on. Now, while I was doing this back in the States, this is when Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump were both running for president. They had made it through their primaries.
May I just ask one quick question?
Yeah.
When you were looking at material that was contra to what you ended up arriving at, do you remember what kind of material that was when were you trying to give? It sounds like you were trying to give all sides, all perspectives a fair shake.
Yeah, it was the material basically stating that we're all the same, and if there are some people that aren't doing as well as others, it's because white people have a leg up on them, and so white people need to drop everything down to the standard to make it equitable. And also, white countries owe something to all of these other countries. So You need to open up your borders and open up your homes. And it's not so hard to read that material, to imbibe that material, because that's the material that's kind of shoved down your throat by default. So that stuff is already there. So it's not hard to get to that at all. And back in the States, when Trump and Hillary Clinton were running, Trump was the only president or the only nominee that I had ever known that said anything at all about immigration. And he caught a tremendous amount of flack over that. So as we know, he's a bit rude. He has his own style. So his style is something that's lacking, but there was a kernel of truth in the things that he was saying. That's why it resonated with people. So as I noticed that he was actually saying something about it, he caught so much flack. And I thought, why is he getting so much flack about this? Why are people so upset? Because some of these core things that he's saying, it's actually the truth. It's not politically correct. It's rude, depending upon your point of view, but it's factually correct, a lot of the things that he's saying. So that's when I started looking closer at what was going on politically. Why do both the Democrats and the Republicans kind of come to the same conclusion sometimes, even though they seem to be at loggerheads? They still pass things through that hurt the American citizens. They don't stop immigration. They talk about it, but they don't actually stop it. It's kind of like good cop, bad cop, and neither one of them is going to help you.
Right.
And so I bend those plans of going back to Europe, and I went to a different place. It's kind of like it's actually a unique place. And it's not a kind of unique place because I'm using the word unique correctly, and I'm sure that Jason will appreciate that. It's a one-of-a-kind place. And it's on the edge of a reservation. So for the past 5 years, I have taught a mix of non-white kids and white kids, and I can see the differences between them, and they're all fine. They're all great, but there is a difference in the biospirit of people. I remember one time when I was a kid, when I went through El Paso, Texas, you just look across the border at Ciudad Juarez, and it looks like a trash dump with little houses plopped in there. And I thought, wait a second, why does one side of this border look like a town and the other side look like a trash dump? What's the difference? What's going on here? And if people honestly ask themselves those questions, it's going to lead you to conclusions that you haven't been taught. It's things that we have to find on our own. So anyway, I'm kind of rambling here a little bit, but
no, it's great.
Okay. What I'm trying to say is that I kind of knew some of this stuff all along. I knew we were different all along, but I didn't know the specific policies that were set up to pull apart Western civilization and replace white people with non-white people. And it took me several years to understand that. And it took me a few years to understand what was going on in public schools.
So maybe that's a good transition to then speak about what you saw when you were teaching in public schools.
Okay. In public schools, first of all, you have your separate states, and then within your states, you have the districts. And you can think of those as its own separate polity. You can think of every district as its own little government within a superstructure government, which is the state. So policy gets made at the state level. It gets passed down to the district. Sometimes it can get passed down to a county level and then down into the district. And then the district may have several schools inside of that. So not every district is going to be exactly the same, but I'm going to give you kind of like a baseline for American schools. Before critical race theory was openly paraded as this is a great thing and we're going to put this in school now, there was already anti-white material in there. And the anti-white material was subversive, it was insidious, and if you weren't aware of it, you may not catch it. It's like the movie, I don't know, They Live or whatever, with the memes where you put the little glasses on and you see what's going on, and you take the glasses off, and then you see the propaganda, and then you put the glasses on and you see what's going on. So once you start to see what's going on, I could see it lots of different places. Almost all the material that teachers use is produced by publishing houses. It's produced by companies that make educational material. So they'll have huge textbooks, math, history, science, whatever. And then the school district will spend thousands of dollars and they will buy that material, and then they will disseminate it to the teachers. And then you have to use that for so many years until it becomes outdated or they get more money to buy something else. So you're supposed to be using that material. And besides that material, there are websites that teachers can access material online. It's still sort of the same thing. It's just online as opposed to being in paper. And within the history lessons, specifically talking about, let's say, Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, segregation, integration, the war for Southern independence, World War I, World War II, the Boer Wars, President Johnson, all of these things, instead of presenting them robustly in a manner that students can see all sides to it, and then critically think and discuss it, little bitty slivers picked out, whatever sliver is going to make white people look absolutely the worst, and then that is magnified, and that's presented to the kids as, this is what's going on. Now we're going to learn about this. And besides that, there's actually some also just straight up lies that's in the material. And with my kids, when I was teaching elementary, my kids knew that I was going to tell them the truth no matter what was going on. Doesn't matter what color they are. I didn't care. And I joked around with them all the time, and they joked around with me. We were completely.
What kinds of things would you be more straight up with them about? And how did they respond to it?
Okay. For example, in social studies class, we were studying geography, to understand geography first, and then we would talk about some of the things that happened within those states. And on the unit on the Western United States, there was information about these people who made movies over in New York. They're just people that made movies in New York. But New York was kind of cloudy, and it was windy and cold, and they didn't like that. And they thought, where could we go to make movies where it was sunnier? So all these people moved all the way over to Southern California. And then they started making movies there. And then everyone was happy. And as I read that, I thought, why is it written like this? So I read through that, and then I addressed the class. And I would do this lots of times while I was teaching, where when you're a teacher, you're doing the instruction, you're blah, 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 you're spewing out the material. But also sometimes you need to model for the students how to think. Or you need to say, okay, time out. We're going to have this little classroom discussion here outside of this normal information. And I said, look, guys, you know that we've talked about several times, there's a difference between fact and opinion. And also, I've told you several times that sometimes when teachers tell you something, it's not going to be the truth. Sometimes if your parents tell you something, it may not be the truth. There's going to be adults sometimes that tell you things that is not exactly the truth, or it's a little bit warped. And for now, you have to accept that because you're a child. You don't have any other choice. But you're going to get older, and you're going to grow up, and you're going to come to the point where you can look these things up for yourself. And you're going to have to decide what's true and what's not true. Okay? So the thing that I just read you, those last couple paragraphs, those aren't exactly true. So now I'm going to tell you what the truth is. So close the door of the classroom. If someone wants to come in, they can come in. And I'm going to tell you the truth. And you can share this with your parents or whoever. Now, this is who the people are. This is why they went over here. Here's the person that actually invented the technology that they used. Here's why they're in Southern California. This is why it's called this name. And here's the things that they make. Now, does anyone have any questions? Yes, no? Okay. Now we go on to the next thing. So I would see that stuff.
Can you give us the quick why they went from New York to Los Angeles?
Yeah, they took the technology from Alexander Graham Bell. He was suing them, and they would not pay up in the lawsuits. So as opposed to staying there and paying for the use of his technology, they fled to get far enough away from New York as they possibly could, still stay within the United States, flee from the law, and then set up movie facilities, and ta-da, you have Hollywood.
And why is it called Hollywood? I know there's some esoteric.
I don't remember that. It has to do with some crazy, I don't know, like satanic or religious.
Okay,
stuff.
so yeah, you've heard the same kind of things I have. Okay,
yeah.
That's what I meant about it being a little more esoteric. And you said this was elementary students?
That's right.
What age were you teaching at the time?
This was 5th grade.
And how would they take that?
Well, see, here's the thing with kids. They take everything just fine. If I told them that aliens came down and ate these people in Hollywood, and now everyone in Hollywood is aliens, they go, yeah, okay, all right. You know, when you develop a trust with your students, they'll believe pretty much anything you say. So that can be good, but that can also be bad. And we see that that's bad across most of education right now, because these kids, they don't know any better, and they're trusting everything that their teachers say. It's like when you're a little kid.
Were they more engaged when you would close the door? I can remember being in 5th grade. Yeah. If anything, I would lean closer if the teacher closed the door and said, "Listen, I'm going to tell you some things that you usually don't hear." I mean, at any age.
Right. Because that was something, if I would do something like that, they know that I'm not going to just be blabbing out this monotone facts that we're going to study, or you're going to go into small groups and work on this. They're going to hear something that they're not going to hear from any other teacher. And I would tell them that several times, like, okay, guys, it's that time. Let's, gather around.
The balancing, I mean, you work in education, I don't, but just my layman's observation and what I, just living life is, yes, kids have to take what they're presented, but the balancing factor of that, the other side of the coin, is that kids often, because they're not as programmed and have all these different complexities running around in their minds as adults, they can sense authenticity. That's what I meant about, I know me and my friends when we were younger, I would think Jason too, if we had a teacher like you, we would have been more engaged in respecting and just sensing that this guy's real. And it's not just that rote. You're not just playing the role of teacher. You're not just Mr. NPC teacher. Okay, kids, we're going to do this unit. And you, like you were saying, now you break into your little groups and you're just going A to B to C and doing what you're told. Kids can tell when someone's real. Actually, my 5th grade teacher just coincidentally was more real. She went off script a lot, introduced us to creative writing. She had us keep a journal for every school day, and we could write whatever we wanted, serialized stories or little reflections. But that's what started me loving writing and literature, because of her. And she was authentic, same kind of thing in 5th grade, just happens to be. You also spoke a little while ago about, so you're on the edge of a reservation. I would think most people know this, but just for our non-American listeners, of course, that means the edge of an Amerindian reservation. Are you able to speak to some of the differences? It's okay to point out differences. Doesn't mean one better, one's worse, but some of the general differences you saw between students of European descent and the Amerindian students, because you had motioned towards that a little earlier.
Yeah. Where to start? Well, let me start by maybe talking about some qualities of Western kind. The white students seem to be able to pay attention a little bit more in class during instruction time, and the white culture places more of an emphasis on being on time, having a concept of time, having a clock in your head so that you meet obligations. And I know it's hard to tell. I don't want to go off too much on it, but the culture here, it's much more relaxed. It's almost as if, let me talk about it this way. Western kind has created this structure for ourselves that works for ourselves. We have a hierarchy, we have time, we have obligations, we get things done. We do not mistreat animals. We pick up trash. We keep things clean. We don't let our houses look like trash dumps. Other cultures don't do that. A lot of American Indian cultures, they do not do that. If you go look at reservations, there's just trash everywhere. I'm not saying it's good or bad. There's just trash everywhere. They, by and large, they do not take care of their animals. If you go out on the reservation, you're going to see lots of three-legged dogs, half-starved dogs, because they don't take care of them, and they don't care. There's good ones and there's bad ones, just like there's
but it was a peaceful utopia before the white man stepped foot on the North American continent. Asterisk. We have to make sure everyone knows that.
Well, that's right. I think that what Brant's saying there is the chord we like to hit, because it's so true, and that is that what we create in Western civilization positively serves our biospirit, as it should. And what the different non-white groups create, it positively serves their biospirits, as it should. And the things are different, as Mr. George points out. There's no metric out in the universe. There's no measuring stick that says one is better than the other. We would rather live in Western civilization because we harmonize with it. And the other environments are disharmonious for us. And we see indeed that non-white peoples who come to Western civilization, some of them do wonderfully well. and they comport to the what we call Western standards, what we create as Western standards. But many of the others, once they have what we talk about in Going Free as numerical courage, they begin to change the environment that they live in, where they're enclaved in Western civilization, to suit their biospirit. And that's essentially what Mr. George is asking about here. They're seeing on one side of the road or the tracks is White Town, is Western civilization. On the other side is a different group of people, and they live very differently. That's just the way it is. It's instinct. I think that's reality. That's reality, and that's also at the same time the healthiest way to look at it.
It goes back to what you said earlier, Brant, about mass immigration on a frequency and a level that is obviously unnatural going on in all of our countries as well. We know what our detractors would say. We know what the mainstream narrative is. And what we have to do, what's incumbent upon us, and I'm seeing the need for us, Jason and I, and those of us here in this community, to assert this and be very clear about this, because a lot of assumptions are made when you generally step out as white sympathetic in any shape, manner, or form. This isn't just a line. This is really how I feel. Like if you were talking to me at a restaurant, at a bar, of course, there's a level of self-defense, and there's a level of aggression that one has to respond to. But in a more general sense, just talking about societies, I love what you said, Brant, about only showing the sliver, how the school material was only showing a sliver of these historical events. It's the same thing with contemporary events. I've used the metaphor of sleight of hand with a magician. It's always look at what this hand is doing so you don't see what this hand is doing. It's always about rounding out the perspective and saying, it's not that we have a hatred for people just on account of their immutable characteristics. This isn't a Naxalt type of thing, but I grew up in a city. I'm a creative person. It's just a statement of fact. I'm not trying to curry favor with anyone or kiss up to anyone. Of course, I've had friends from different backgrounds, and I can enjoy that to a certain degree. But it was against the backdrop of knowing that, as you said, we're in Western civilization. That means something. It comes from us. And when you look at something like the migration status you were speaking about, it's not about these people being oppressed and everyone trying to come to the same standard. What's never spoken about is what it's doing to the children that are already there. What is it doing to the children in Britain, in East London, as you were saying, in Norway, in Germany, in all of these places? That the fact that that's never said, and when you push certain people when they are anti-white, they'll admit implicitly or explicitly that they actually want to hurt, they actually want to cause harm. Well, then that's actually an immoral position. That is actual hate and vitriol, and that's the very fine line we have to walk. We have to be very true to who we are, but also not careen over into these roles that have been set for us. They're like traps. They've been set for us by the media narrative, by Hollywood, who you mentioned before. It's very easy. I know people get angry, and there's certainly such a thing as righteous anger. Jason has one of his many great turns of phrase that, of course, anger is justified when it's protecting the innocent, something to that effect. But I wanted to hear, let's see, you spoke about school, the units or the actual policy, what you're told to teach. Just before we get into your school, what you have online, I'm just curious, one more little subject under this heading. It's very relevant to Jason's book, Crucible, as well, is what about not the school policy or not the actual materials of what you're told to teach in the classroom? What about the implicit aspects as well? The fact that when a couple of non-white kids fight, they're just showing like a healthy spirit or something. But when a white kid fights, then he's obviously some hate-filled little monster that needs to be punished. the double standards, even if it's not written down in code, or the way that it could be among administration, it could be among parents, it could be student to student. Anything you want to say to that? That's more the unsaid aspects of what you saw in school.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's as important as the explicit standards or the explicit material. And I know I've said this before in some stream, and some people may not like this, but I'm just going to say a sexist comment here. There's far too many women teaching in elementary school and too many women in administration. And the reason that I say that is because think about this. Think about Angela Merkel. Angela Merkel is a very competent leader, but what is she doing to Germany, and what is she doing to Europe? What type of ideology does she have? Now, imagine an entire nation where all of your school is taught and administered by Angela Merkel clones. What is going to be taught to those kids? What's going to happen to them? So what I'm saying is there's an extremely strong feminized aspect to public education. Now, when I grew up, I had one PE teacher who was a man in elementary school, and everyone else was female, and that was no problem. I loved all my teachers. They were all women. That was fine. That was normal. But because of the third wave, fourth wave, umpteenth wave of feminism, that has indoctrinated young women that are now teaching in public schools. So they're going to bring in their biases into the classroom. And another thing that people don't know about public schools is that teachers have to have training every so often. And all of the training that I've ever seen, except for one guy who was a co-trainer with another woman, it was all done by women. So they bring all their biases in there as well. So they have these biases, this anti-white bias with reference to history, like we just talked about. And they also bring in a bias that is, we need to sit down and we need to talk about things a lot, and we need to do a lot of group work. And I'm going to treat you guys like you're a bunch of dumb kids, and we're going to talk about this, and we're going to look at these statistics of violence and suspensions by race, and how can we level the playing field. And the reality is never addressed of, well, why are these kids acting like this? These kids act like this because of their parents. Look, when you have parent-teacher conferences and you ever wonder, why does this kid act like this, whether it's good or bad or indifferent, as soon as you meet their parents, you go, oh, okay, I understand why now. So if you've got kids in school that are screwing up, that are stealing, that are punching other kids, trying to punch teachers, running off, breaking things, throwing stuff on the floor, all this kind of stuff, what are their parents doing? Okay, the parents are never held responsible for the most part. It's always something that teachers need to do. You as a teacher, you need to solve this problem. And you need to figure out how you can take the non-white students who are getting suspended at this level and white students are getting suspended here. We need to bring that down. Okay, guys, let's get together now. How can we bring this down? Like, no, damn it. Ugh. It's like, it just drives me insane. So all this nonsense that you have to put up with. So what's my speech here? My speech here is that they're not looking at reality. They're trying to do this, close the achievement gap and level the playing field, and always looking at excuses instead of looking at the reality of what's actually driving these problems in public school.
Yeah, to say nothing of the fact that even if some of the ideology was a little healthier, and the women coming out of these colleges to prepare them for being educators, quote unquote, even if there wasn't quite as much anti-white indoctrination there, what about the young boys who need men to look up to? Even if you have the most wonderful, balanced-minded teacher for a 6, 7, 8-year-old, one of those years, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1 or 2 of those years, the boys in the class need a male teacher. I've seen it. They just respond totally differently. I know in the 40s, after World War II, there was initiatives, at least in some cities in the States, to fast track young men, and then maybe some of them were getting back from the military, but not all of it was military related, to become public school teachers. And then in the 50s and 60s, there were a lot of male public school teachers. I know my father had a lot more male elementary teachers and role models than I did growing up. And I think we need to address that stigma of it not being manly to teach younger kids, to teach high school and certainly elementary school. I mean, you're obviously a manly guy, military guy, and you chose to teach young kids, and my hat's off to you. And I think we need to address that whole stigma as well. If you have anything to say to that, please go ahead. But we also do want to get into the school, your school.
Sure. Yeah. And also I want to say something about the FBI, DOJ going after parents at the, school boards.
Yes.
Yeah,
we want to
I agree
that as well.
Okay. Yeah, I agree 100%. That is very important. I've taught several kids over the past, 14, 15 years who would even call me dad in class because they didn't have a dad. So it's not Mr. So-and-so. It's like, you want to call me dad? Like, okay, whatever. Yeah, I'm your dad here. I'm your dad for 7 hours a day because you don't have one, because your real dad sucks, or he's not around, or he's in jail, or whatever the problem is, So good teachers actually cover a whole lot of ground. You do a lot more than just teaching. And it is a problem, like you just said, that we don't have a lot of male role models for these little kids. And I've seen kids that were problem kids, constant problems in the classroom, constantly getting in trouble, constantly going to the principal, getting suspended. Okay, you're not going out to lunch, you're eating lunch with the dean or whatever. And then they'd have a class with me, or they have another class with a male, and then they're fine. The next year they have a class with a male, they're fine. They've got a role model there. They got someone they respect, someone they can get along with. So not only do we connect racially, but we also connect by gender in school. And we do need to have more males in there. The problem is, what if you have an alpha male, he wants to be a teacher, and then he has to put up with all this feminized, anti-wise crap all the time. Yeah. After a few years, he says, okay, I'm done with this. I'm done. I'm going to go do something else. So the problem
has to be the admin. Yeah, I know what I was saying is easier said than done. Ideally, it's the whole system where the admin, as you were mentioning, where a lot of decisions are made, has that balance there, the male as well. Because, for a kid, I mean, any age, but for a little kid, the presence of an older male is just a center of gravity. It's a center of gravity in a way. And again, everyone knows, that anyone that knows the shows knows, I've been accused of being a feminist. I'm a creative guy. I'm not anti-woman at all, but just the fact of the matter is there's a strength, there's this pillar, there's this center of gravity. I'm putting myself back into being a little kid and male role models that you just can't get with a woman. It's a different thing. Women are wonderful. They could provide all sorts of things a man can't, but we need that balance. And it goes back to what you said before. And this is one of the big reasons I started doing what I do, is it's so easy for us to get hoodwinked and thrown into this thing where we're like, people who think like us are just corralled off into these, choose your extreme. You're going to go over here. You're going to be this, this is what you should think now because you don't think in the mainstream. So you're an extremist and you're socially ostracized. You're a weirdo. That's what they want for us. We need people here, like what we do on this show, in this community. Jason and I connected on this from the beginning, that are seeing it in a more robust way, to borrow a word you used earlier, Brant, and to show that we can fit our worldview into something that is holistic and considers everything. We're the good guys because we are considering everything. We're not just trying to show you this one little sliver, do the sleight of hand thing. But at any rate, it is high time that we hear. I know people are curious to hear about the School of the West. It's an online resource for homeschooling, several units already developed by you and volunteers. So why don't you take us through your overall vision of it, and then we can break down a little into the different subjects that you have there and what you plan to do as we move forward into the future.
Okay. Well, I apologize to anyone who's already heard this 12 times, but needs to get done. I originally had it set up as material that homeschooling parents could use for their kids, and it's white positive. So for several years, I had in the back of my mind an idea of a type of curriculum that needs to be taught. You know, every time that I would encounter something that was a lie, every time that I would encounter something that's anti-white, I think, now, if I was actually teaching this, if I could teach this, how would I actually present this information? How would I present the entire picture? And how would I teach critical thinking? And how would I teach, or how would I present material that's going to buoy the spirits of white children, that's going to start teaching them about their ancestors, about where we come from, about Western civilization? Because when you're born, you don't realize that you're in, quote, Western civilization. You just see stuff everywhere and you want to eat Fruit Loops and macaroni and cheese. Well, after your Fruit Loops and macaroni and cheese, where did that come from? Okay, it came from us because we built this. So this material here, or the original idea was, if I could be a teacher in a school and teach whatever I wanted, which would include the basics of reading and writing and math, etc., because you need to know those things. Put that on a website, because we can't build the actual physical school for that right now. And so I started putting together the sections. There's the reading section, there's the math section, there's history and culture.
It's on, for anyone who's just listening, it's on screen right now. Jason is showing a screenshot of the website and scrolling through it.
There's a history and culture section, because I think those things should be taught together. Those are intertwined. There's going to be an art section, and there's also the white well-being section. So soon after I was actively thinking about how would I want to teach this stuff, that's when I started following what Jason was saying, because what Jason was saying was fundamental to everything that had to do with white well-being. No one else addressed the psychological aspects that need to be addressed right now. And I thought, this is what needs to be taught to kids as well. So there's a white well-being section. Also on the bottom there's an engineering and programming section, because some guys have come forward that are interested in that. They have knowledge in that. So after I started putting some of the foundational stuff on there, other people came forward with their skills and their expertise and what they were interested in, and they could give me finished products, or they could give me videos to edit and then put together, and then it all gets set up into the different pages and the different modules. So this is material that will continue to fill out over time. And also I've started doing live lessons where I'm teaching elementary grades reading and grammar and math, and then I'll be moving white well-being into that. And then later in the year, I'll also be introducing some science on the elementary grade level. And the one other thing that's not on here right now is going to be a self-reliance section. So this is going to have videos of people working on cars, pictures of people building, chicken huts or framing houses or doing things that we used to know how to do in the past before everything was done for us. When your car would break down, you would get out your tools and you would fix it. That's how I was brought up. That's how all my relatives, when I was a kid, that's how they all acted. Now I know people, their car breaks down, they don't know how to do anything. They call AAA or someone to tow their car, and everything gets done for them, and they have no idea what's going on. So I want to have a section here where it teaches people how to get back to the knowledge that we used to have, both knowledge that we could use right now, like working on a modern automobile, but also back in time. How do you sew? How do you knit? How do you repair things? How do you prepare some food? How do you raise some livestock? How do you build structures? This sort of stuff.
I'm just in the chat singing your praises. And again, I know he's a humble guy, but it's a reflection on Jason did drop the pebble in the pond. And a lot of this comes from what he started. Look at this. This is amazing. Brant, my hat's off to you. Look at the self-starters in this community who are saying, all right, this is what I know. These are my skills. I'm going to step up and add something. This is incredible. And I know I've said it before. I know we've spoken before, but I just want to say publicly on this show again, how amazed I am at you and all the people here, and how beautiful it is to see all of this unfolding.
Cool. Thank you. Well, like Jason Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say quickly, it really is. And folks, these are, I met up with Roy Danton today, and he's passing, he's on his way back home. And as I've said many times before, we build real friendships here. This is a real community. Just because we're not face to face, there's a real limiting thing. It's this provincial nationalism that we can't fall prey to. It's good to be able to meet in person, but I was around before there was all of these internet threads. All we did was meet in person, and we didn't suddenly recapture our destiny. We build real friendships here. And self-starters, as Jared is talking about, we all are. We're drawing the best from all of the different groups and communities in the white sympathetic sphere, and bringing them over to become white positive in service to white well-being, and implementing the practice of going free and everything that we're doing, radically changing the world, getting the plaudits, as I was mentioning this past Sunday, from one of the most widely acclaimed and deeply respected, highly educated women who has been in the white sympathetic sphere ever. Upon hearing, I don't know what might have been I don't know how many minutes total of me answering questions in front of the group. But upon hearing that, she was elated. She told me that this is how peoples are born. And these are the fields in which she has her deep education. This is how peoples are born. This is how countries are started. This is how nations are made. Everything that you're talking about. She was very excited and gave deep praise for the work that we're doing. That's why we're drawing the very best. And yeah, we're going to have, slip ups. People are going to trip and skin their knee, and it's the way it is with anything else. But as long as we continue moving toward a white positive Western sunrise, we're going to be recapturing our destiny. We're going to continue doing things that are hard to believe in some cases. I will tell you this, folks, there are many of the things that we're doing that a lot of like old guard people and elsewhere, they claim are not actually happening. School of the West isn't actually happening, according to some of these people. It doesn't matter that there's a website. People who have gotten off the path to suicide hasn't actually happened. People whose lives are improving as a consequence of implementing the practice of going free, not actually happening. This has a lot to do with especially with a lot of guys, feeling threatened and challenged in what they're able to do in life. So there are a lot of small people that scurry around the edges. There are a lot of other people out there that are just used to losing, lifetimes of losing. And so they can't believe that there's something working. They also are not necessarily the type that are going to answer the call to put an end to the greatest immoral, unethical, and evil concept, and therefore the individuals holding that concept of our age, and that is anti-whiteism. When we make friendships around planet Earth, which we have to do, we are a single people. Get rid of provincial nationalism, feed that to the paper shredder. Get rid of this. You have to see them in person. Get rid of it. We're going to have to be one people with many countries. You're going to be friends with people on the other side of the planet. You're going to be friends with people on the other side of the country. And guess what? When you meet them for the first time, like I met the great Roy Danton today for the first time, we shook hands, we hugged. There was no awkwardness. We have known each other for years. That's how it actually works. So remember that you have in Brant, and I've been mentioning this for a couple of Sundays now, he is holding classes now for hire where it could be multiple children in a group, and it can even be individualized. You can get to him now if you need this help. Your children are a public school, they're a private school, they're being poisoned. Even if your children are homeschooled, what materials are you using? Are you allowing them to go, out of the house, or do you keep them locked up in the basement with no access to television or anything printed? Because if they see anything in the outside world, they're being infected, they're being destroyed by anti-whiteism. You need help with this. School of the West is there for you. Make sure that you make use of these resources. Let's make sure that this doesn't get diluted with people trying to create the equivalents of on every single different provincial little town in every little. This is a new world, and we have to stop with this nonsense. It's global, period. So people need all that matters is who's going to be in control of our destiny. It needs to be us. You're not going to be able to roll back the clock and make it not global anymore. Our technology has done that, and we should embrace what we are able to do. I felt like the need to say that. Big hello to Roy, who's here in the live chat as well. And folks, don't be afraid. Reach out and get the help. Let's make School of the West the greatest thing on planet Earth. And I'll pass it back. You had something to say, Brant.
I don't. I have no idea what it was.
Jason, did you just want to quickly mention the story that Brant had referenced earlier, and then maybe get some of his thoughts on it?
I don't have a news item pulled up at the moment, but of course, many people are asking about, and many people have heard. This is it's a chilling thing. Now we don't need to overplay it. This kind of thing has happened before. Back in the back in the 80s and 90s, it was very common in the United States for the anti-whites in county, state, and federal government to sick law enforcement on anybody who objected to anti-whiteism. The idea, of course, was to cause a chilling effect, to get people to just stop opposing anti-whiteism, and it worked beautifully. So there were there would be big articles, there would be meetings where they would be pointing out and arguing how it's not against the law to be able to say this or do that or oppose this. Don't fall into the trap, by the way, folks. I'll just say, and I'll pass it over to Brant to get Brant's views on it, because what we do have is, and of course we defer to CNN and whatever they say about what's happening with this FBI issue. But we do have a situation where parents are objecting to anti-whiteism under one of the many rubrics that the anti-whites will use today. They'll just change the name. You know, if you put up enough pressure against one name, they'll just change it to something else. But we know it as anti-whiteism. As Brant was pointing out brilliantly, it's always been there. It was there from when we were children, and it was there when our parents were children, to various degrees, various iterations, various names, sometimes not named. That's when it's most powerful. Anti-whites are getting dumber. They're not getting smarter, folks. But the FBI has been asked to look into these parents, and perhaps Brant will share some more information, who have been objecting to anti-whiteism in schools. And I think even Loudoun or Fairfax County, I live in Fairfax County, and then Loudoun is the county right beside us. I think they might even been named. That we do know there's been a lot of information out of that. Perhaps people remember where I read the words of the non-white anti-white woman, member of some sort of official of the NAACP, also on some sort of school board in Loudoun County, where she ran down the list and said something along the lines, and check with CNN if I'm wrong, something about hunting down those who are, and she gave this long list, and what it amounted to was any white person who's not anti-white, that they're coming for you. So there's quite a struggle going on in Loudoun County in Virginia. But in all of these cases, I'm going to pass it right to Brant. In all of these cases, you need to use the lexicon, the concepts that we teach in the practice of going free, at a bare minimum, the 5 key concepts: anti-white, anti-whiteism, anti-white narrative, Western kind, white erasure. You do that and you'll be changing the world. But it's a chilling thing because you can imagine FBI knocking on your door for objecting to what's being taught to your children, that they're taught to hate themselves if they're white. That obviously that's a scary thing for parents. And we've seen this sort of thing. And I want to tie it to, as I pass it to Brant, something he was just saying. And we just hit the top of the hour, folks, and we'll be here for about another 15 minutes. So if you have any financial gifts, questions, or comments, please get them in now. You can do that on Cash App or on Entropy. Entropy is up and running. The thing I'll tie it to pass it to Brant is this, that this sort of leveling is something that is, for most women, a normal desire. And it works beautifully when you have your own little group of children that you have produced, you've made people, and they are, they're in your home, and you want to keep things as placid as possible, even if unfair in some situations. We've all, I think, experienced that with siblings. where parents just wanted peace, even if something was quite unfair, and we felt indignant as a consequence. Well, we now have this mentality empowered, enthroned. And so we now see the big sister state. I really don't like how people talk about big brother. It really is big sister, because it's big sister that knocks on the door and says, you're not allowed to disagree with mom and dad in the government. You have to just obey them. We don't care how unfair it is. And you have to stop excelling at whatever you're doing, your grades or whatever it might be. You have to stop. And of course, this only this nanny state idea, this nanny state desire only is inflicted upon Western kind. It is the same way you see on a smaller scale, where you see this idea, this mentality favoring a child for whatever reason. Perhaps the adult in the room, she thinks that child has been aggrieved, and then for whatever whatever reason, then that child is put at the front, is given preferential treatment. We see that now on a grand scale across all of Western civilization. Indeed, I was talking with Roy right before the show and racing back here about how in Germany, you have to get a permit to have a fire in your fireplace. Now talk about a big sister state, that you can't even start a fire in your fireplace. I'd burn the house down, not mine, and not theirs either. It's just metaphorical. But I mean, I would just, this is outrageous. But that's the kind of thing that is happening all across the West. The FBI agents coming to parents' homes. Now is the time to turn to people like, or to turn to Brant, not people like Brant, to turn to Brant and turn to School of the West. Brant, what are your thoughts on the government now saying, not only are we going to teach these anti-whites, not only are we going to teach your white children to hate themselves, but if you don't like it, we're going to send the Federal Bureau of Investigation to have a conversation with you.
I think it's wonderful. The FBI, they're really, really great guys, and I love CNN. I just want to say that first. I think the one thing that people can understand as a model is, if you look at our government and you see how useless the Democrats and the Republicans are, and how they are controlled by money of the lobbyists, and they don't take care of the people that they're supposed to take care of, you can think of that as a model for what some school boards do. Not every school board is going to be the same, but there's a lot of corruption there. So if you have a very anti-white school board, and you have a population of parents that have finally woken up because the anti-white material is being propagandized and advertised so loudly now that they can't ignore it. They're pissed off because they were kind of asleep at the wheel a little bit. Plus, not only do you have the CRT, but sometimes, you've got mask or don't mask or this or that, medical stuff, which is also pissing them off. And the school boards may not be that receptive to what the parents have to say. So the parents are getting pissed off. The school boards say, you know what? I don't need to listen to you. I don't work for you. Well, actually, the school boards do work for the parents. That's how it works. The parents are the stakeholders. Now, in some districts, you might be able to recover because every 2 years or 1 year or however the school district is set up, there's going to be school board elections, and you can start replacing those people. Some places, if it's so entrenched that you can't get enough of those people out, that district is lost. You're not going to be able to recover that. Just like if you're thinking about a polity that has been ruled by, an outside ethnic group for so long, it's lost. It's not going to recover. You have to face up to that. So the parents are finally pissed off enough. So the National School Board Association contacted the Biden administration, which then contacted the Department of Justice to then say, you're maybe committing acts of terrorism, threats of violence. You're being very, very naughty. We're going to spank you. We don't like this. And we're going to send our agents to your houses and maybe treat you the way that we treated protesters on the 6th of January. So overall, I think this is a good thing because it's waking up enough people, and this is going to depend upon how pissed off the parents are. If the parents know that they're coming for them anyway, and they're going to share what's going on, and they're going to come together in community groups, and they're not going to back down, well, things can start to change. What direction it's going to go in, I don't know. But according to the last census, 1 out of 12 kids in the United States are now homeschooled. So you might be in a district where it cannot recover. They're not going to listen to you. They're not going to change what's going on. So you're going to have to decide, are you going to homeschool? Are you going to go someplace else? Are you going to put up with it? How are you going to protect your kid? So it's all up in the air right now.
And how can you help parents now when they're turning to you? And this is another thing, folks, to keep in mind. When you use the 5 key concepts, when you use the concepts, other concepts that we teach in Going Free, you will win these discussions. You will shut down the anti-whites at these PTA, at these school board meetings. When you put them in the position of being the ne'er-do-well, the evildoer, the immoral one, and they have to defend immoral acts, they will retreat from that. Now, what will that do to them specifically? Maybe the people on the school board, maybe nothing, maybe something. But the other parents who hear it, they will immediately adopt what you're saying. So keep the pedal to the metal with using the concepts that we have brought to bear in service to white well-being and the recapture of our destiny. Now, there are going to be many parents that are reaching out, and they're going to be parents right now, people who are listening, maybe people who are not parents yet, going to become parents, or they know parents, and they're hearing about School of the West, and they're hearing about Brant, and they're hearing about these things for the first time. What do you have for them that they can say to these people, these parents, prospective parents, etc., to get them to have a look? What pitch do you have? If you had their ear for 30 or 60 seconds, how would you boil it down? What can they share about School of the West?
Okay. What I have is material, like the basic material that students would be learning in public schools. More specifically, if they signed up for a membership, they would be taught within a class, taught by me. They can still use the material on their own. And the thing that I've said before is that, look, school is supposed to prepare the child for the complex world that they're going to go out into. And the world is more complex now. And one of the ways in which that is more complex is there's this anti-whiteism that they're going to be hit with. They have to be prepared for it. So an extra thing that you have to teach white kids now is, what does this anti-white propaganda look like? What is Western kind? What is biospirit? How do you connect them again with the people, give them a solid foundation, let them know what's going to be happening? And then as they learn their other basic skills, they have this psychological foundation as well. And then they're ready as they become adults. So this addresses the psychological concerns of children, not just the, quote, educational concerns.
Yeah, fantastic. That's really important. I'm glad you made that point, because it absolutely does. It's going to, your children they're sponges, and they are all day long being exposed to anti-whiteism. There's no way to get away from it. In fact, we ourselves will speak. On occasion, we're all healing. It's a lifelong process. You can't delete anti-whiteism. These MPs are in your brain forever. Can you forget how to ride a bicycle or drive a car? No. So they're even going to be getting exposed to it from us. So we need to be taking steps to protect them. They're going to need to learn things like reading, writing, arithmetic, etc. Help them to get there in a place like School of the West. Go to School of the West and educate your children there. Supplement the material that they're being taught if they're a public school already, or private school. You have them on some other homeschool curriculum. Supplement everything that they're getting there, or use this material in lieu of. I've had people send me material from homeschooling materials, private school, very expensive religious private schools, and of course public schools, where even the math problems, even the basic like addition, they have drawn characters that encourage biological white erasure, and really outrageous. That's what you can expect from the anti-whites now. To a degree, we can be happy that they've become so dumb, But nonetheless, that's what you can expect. So you need to be, their education is the most important thing of all. So let me take a quick look, and looks like entropy is up and running, but it's blank right now. We do have the great white student transmission is with us, another fantastic warrior for white well-being. White student transmission, financially gifting $15, and student apropos for the conversation here today. And he writes, for the School of the West, I am a supporter. And he's got a little white emoji fist and a resolute emoji face. That's what we could say there.
Right.
So thank you so much. White Student Transmission, always doing great things. A lover of Western kind and the natural environment. All of that we want to preserve. We have the Watcher who has a request for Brant and says, please ask to add a financial literacy section. Do you have any thoughts on that, Brant? Have you thought about that before? I'm guessing here that we're talking about teaching our young how to manage their money, what to do with it, where to put it, sort of a thing, without getting into the areas where you have to be licensed to give advice. But your thoughts, brother?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. That's one of those things that's been kicking around in the back of my mind. Financial literacy. What are taxes? How do you pay your taxes? The real life skills that people need, besides just, how do you cook an omelet, that sort of thing. And that will be filled out over time. If no one steps forward who wants to work on that specifically, that's something that I'll be putting together. The amount of work that I've got in my mind right now, stuff that I want to do, it might take me 10 years to get to, or there might be some breaks where I can get it done faster. But I've got it down here in my notes. That's something that will be made either by myself or by someone else. Yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah, that is really fantastic. Anything like that, life skills that can be useful, of course, age appropriate, and that's one of the things that Brant does magnificently, folks. He and I had a long conversation about bringing the lexicon of going free, these concepts which some of them you can't just give right to a child, because they're not going to, depending upon their age, they're not going to really get it at that age. So he's able to say, I've been in teaching, I can break that down for them and deliver it in a way that is age appropriate, so that they'll get it and it'll make sense. That's exactly what we want. That's exactly what we need to be doing. And you'll be learning at the same time. You'll be going free at the same time, improving yourself, which increasingly, as you address these sicknesses, these thought diseases, you access more and more of your physical, mental, and spiritual potential, all of which has been locked up and shackled by poisonous ideas from our earliest ages. So just imagine what you could be, how far you could go, and then just imagine, depending upon the age of your children, how far you can help them go, how much you can enable them to access those latent abilities that are inside of them, preventing the anti-whites from achieving what they want to achieve, which is to geld, to neuter, to chain the entirety of our people, so that we can never resist, so that we can never fight back, so that we can never answer the call to put an end to the greatest evil of our age, which is anti-whiteism. That's the victory that the anti-whites have achieved. That is how important School of the West is. Let's get Brant your final thoughts, and tell folks where they can find you, and then we will be tapping out on another great episodes. And if anybody has anything, final question or comment or financial gift as we are wrapping up, get them in now, and we'll get it before we tap out. Brant.
All right. Jason, could you scroll down to the bottom of one of those pages?
Sure can.
And then be part of my answer. So down on the bottom, right down there, and that's so I can be contacted. So right now you can just use that email, contact@schoolofthewest.world, or on Gab, you can send me a message. I'm not going to get kicked off of Gab, I'm pretty sure. And so my message is, if there's someone who's considering signing up for a membership plan for their child and they want to know more about it, like exactly how is that going to work, you can email me. And people who think that they have something to offer, like if there's a skill that you know how to do, you have a skill and you're willing to sit down and film it somehow. You're going to crochet something, you're going to do some cross stitch, you're going to build a doghouse, like whatever it is, an actual self-reliant skill, I can use that on the site. And I know that it's difficult to sit down and get these things done. It takes some sacrifice. I know this. Some people approach me and they say, "Hey, I'm excited about this, and I'm excited about this. I'm going to do this." Like, okay, cool. And then like I never hear from them again because it takes time. You have to give something of yourself to do this. And I'm not getting rich or anything off of this. I'm doing this for our kids, and further on down the line, we have to start building foundations now. It's good, like I said before, it's good to talk to adults, but we also need to talk to children. We need to get that built. So this right here, this is something that I'm looking at that's going to last a really, really, really long time, and it's going to continue to evolve and grow. So if you've got a talent and you think that you can sit down and you can film that, even if you don't know how to edit it, maybe it's just some raw footage. You don't even have to do a voice overlay. Just film what you're doing. And then later on, you can voice over, or someone else can voice over, and then we can edit it. So think about filming or sharing something that you know how to do. It could be something that you would think might be taught inside of a school or outside of a school. Because one of the reasons why I want to do this is because this isn't constrained by a school district. This isn't constrained by state standards. No one can tell us what we have to do here. Everything that can help our children, I want to put on here. All right, that's my speech on that.
Magnificently said, brother. Thank you so very much for your service to White Wellbeing. And one of these, of all these important areas, one of the most important. Mr. George, final thoughts,
again,
where folks can find you.
Brant, just want to say again, it's tremendous what you're doing. And for anyone who knows a parent looking for these kind of resources, might be already homeschooling or thinking about homeschooling, and they weren't here today, or you're not aware of them being tuned into what Brant is doing here, please share this. Share that website, schoolofthewest.world. Get in touch with Brant to check out the options of how you can get involved and how you can start getting this material to the kids. So please remember, there's a lot. I know there's a lot of people that aren't seeing this episode right now as we're live, but are interested in these kinds of things. So send them an email with the link if you know parents looking for these homeschooling resources. Other than that, Jason and I have the afterparty.tv. All of these shows are cataloged there. My site is thegreatorder.com. As always, working on music, and hopefully we'll have some new things for you soon. But other than that, I hope all of you have a great weekend. My love to all of you, and we will talk soon.
Thank you much, Jared, and thank you for everything that you do in service to White Wellbeing. It has been an amazing ride with you thus far, and it continues to get better with all of these victories that mount up. So much so, I can't tell you all how much I love the fact that there are so many of these people who absolutely just cannot believe the successes. They're dumbfounded. Heads are spinning. It could not be better. I am so delighted. It's been magnificent to be with everybody once again here on tap. Everybody who's participating in the conversation, a big thank you. A big thank you to everybody who was a wallflower. We like the flowers too. So speak up sometime if you get a little desire to do so. We're friendly. But otherwise, thank you for being here. Thank you for everybody who will be watching in replay, as well as everybody who is here live. A big round of raucous emojis, folks. Get them out for Bubba. Bubba, who has financially gifted $25. And he writes, for White Wellbeing. God bless you, brother. That is magnificent. Big raucous round of emojis for Bubba here in the waning seconds of this tap. And a big thank you for Null and to Roy for moderating. Once again, it is often, elsewhere, a thankless job. Not here, though. We love our moderators. So we look forward, folks, because it is so glorious. Every time we get together here on tap with all of you, we look forward to seeing you all again